Hello from Vietnam to the world and to the University of the Pacific here at Stockton, California. I was born in Vietnam and grew up in Vietnam, and I lived many years in Europe. I came back home during the war. I've been a teacher, a diplomat, an elected representative, and today I'm a social, cultural, and educational entrepreneur. I define myself as passionately Vietnamese, creatively individual, and thoughtfully global. In a sense, Vietnam's journey is my journey. It's striving to its place into the sun and how I relate to it, how I contribute and impact on it, moves me and makes me. And this intertwined journey, I have come to the conclusion that the more globalized our world becomes, the more we need to be anchored in our nationhood, our culture, and our specific individual identity. We need to navigate this triangle of self, nation, and the world creatively in our own specific way if we are to find peace and fulfillment. Personally, I don't believe in the notion of the pure global citizen, one who would drift about, breeze in and out and above nations and communities, not belonging anywhere, not committed to any constituency smaller than the broader world. But you and me know that for the foreseeable future, people will keep asking, where are you from? Now let's ask ourselves, what are Vietnam and the Vietnamese known for? I believe that the defining strength of the Vietnamese nation is our enduring humanity and identity through the worst ordeals and trials. Wars tend to dehumanize. Vietnam has suffered massive physical destruction and immense loss of life. Successive wars, however, have failed to dehumanize the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese nation emerged from wars, retaining their humanity, unshackled by resentment and hatred, bent on moving on. You just have to look at faces of Vietnamese, old and young, soon after the war. Many visitors to Vietnam, including US veterans who were stationed in Vietnam before, cannot feel but be surprised at the lack of resentment towards Americans, including from our own veterans. And the same attitude applied to French veterans earlier. And this is the natural disposition of the Vietnamese people that could never be dictated by any government. The Vietnamese fight hard for what they treasure above all, which is their independence and identity. But once the fight is over, they look forward and don't let resentment drive them. A Korean-American professor once observed to me, I don't know how you, the Vietnamese, do it to reconcile so fast with the Americans. We, the Koreans and the Chinese on the one hand, and the Japanese on the other, at times, the hurt and the anger of the past still haunts us. Those of you old enough may remember the tragedy of My Lai, a village in central Vietnam, where back in 1968, a US platoon killed more than 500 unarmed villagers, all of them women, children, and old men. But on that fateful day, 3 US soldiers on a helicopter happened to fly into the area, and they took it upon themselves to save 2 young villagers, 2 young women, by whisking them away to safety. There is a documentary by filmmaker Trần Văn Thủy called The Sound of Violin in My Lai. It shows the return to My Lai several decades later by Captain Thompson, one of the 3 soldiers on that helicopter, and the deeply emotional moment when he meets again the 2 women he had saved. The women, now in middle age, weep and embrace him in gratitude for having saved their lives. The meaningfulness of this moment is that the horror and grief of My Lai did not totally engulf these women. There was enough emotional empathy and maturity for them to make the distinction between those who had killed the innocents and the defenseless, and those brave men of conscience who did the right thing amidst the madness of that darkest day. Captain Thompson and his comrades did not let war dehumanize them. And the 2 women villagers emerged from the tragedy still able to discern right from wrong, to remain unembittered, unhateful, in a word, still humane. It is the singular legacy of openness of heart and soul that we Vietnamese from inside and outside Vietnam must treasure and uphold. I'd like now to ask, what is it that the Vietnamese are known for? I would say their fortitude, their resilience, their resourcefulness, their adaptability. Tomorrow is another day. These words of Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind hold particular resonance with the Vietnamese psyche. Post-war Vietnam is a living testimony to this. Let me tell you the story of Jerry Sternin. Jerry Sternin was the country director of Save the Children US in Vietnam. One day he said something puzzling to me. He said, "I've never had to feel pity for anyone in Vietnam." Of course, I asked him, "What do you mean?" And here is his answer. "I've worked in many poor countries of the developing world. There still are in Vietnam pockets of poverty comparable to, say, Bangladesh. But in the most destitute corners of Vietnam, I've never had to feel pity for the old villagers that I met. Because looking at them, there was no sense of despair, of fatalistic resignation, of the sense of giving up. Instead, you could read the quiet resolve that they would continue to strive for a better future, if not for themselves, then for their children and grandchildren." This is the fortitude, the resilience, the ability to look ahead and adapt. In other words, the indomitable character that I've been speaking of. The Vietnamese diaspora on all continents equally show this remarkable ability to overcome, rise, and excel in different places, in diverse circumstances, particularly the power of education. Now, what lies ahead? What challenges lie ahead for Vietnam and the Vietnamese. During the war, greed, this basic human instinct, was naturally muted by deeper and more powerful drivers of our actions. Today, in peace and plenty, we, the Vietnamese, we are faced with a threat of greed, unleashed, shameless. And this is an existential threat to our legacy and identity. During the war, we were grounded in our local and national reality, no matter how harsh. Today, as we move into the world, as we are more of the world, we still need, in fact, more than ever, to nurture our roots, our sense of belonging to a specific place, community, nation. Culture dies hard. Culture is what is left when you have lost everything, as the French writer says. Culture makes us human. The Vietnamese culture and character has enabled us to absorb, to assimilate, and to turn into our own the changes that we've faced through the centuries. And today, it enables us to live with the paradox of reconciling globalism and individuality. Those of you who belong to the worldwide Vietnamese diaspora do embrace the richness of biculturalism, the culture of the society you live in, of the country you're a citizen of, and the culture of your origins. Nurture your biculturalism or cross-culturalism, and then you can confidently move out to the world, secure knowing who you are, where you belong, and what you can offer to the world. And remember, in this day and age, you can belong to more than one place. The global and the local are in you. Vietnam and the Vietnamese come to the world with a message of hope, fortitude, and compassion. Thank you.